So I almost went for the hard liquor.
So let's do this. So one of the things that we're going to do tonight is this is going to be a one take Sally. Meaning what?
No, try. Go ahead and explain, but I'm going to probably change it. But go ahead.
Well then, okay. Well, hey, we are live. So hey, if you happen to be joining us, whether live or you're streaming this after the fact, this is Stormfront Freaks Raw. We're at episode 167. Wow. And this tonight is going to be a lot different. This is going to be a little different show than we're used to. We had our guest bail on us because of Hurricane Ian. And so we've scrambled in the last 24 hours to create a show that is going to be very Hurricane Ian-centric. It's kind of hard when you have a podcast scheduled during a major Category 4 hurricane hitting the United States to not cover it or talk about it. So we just decided let's just throw everything in and we're all in for Hurricane Ian tonight. So that's what we're going to be talking about and discussing. Hello to all of our Patreon members that get to watch this live or have exclusive streaming access for the first month after we've done it. Certainly you're more than welcome to join us. We always love more teammates on Patreon. Just go to stormfrontfreaks.com and you'll find all the details and find all the cool stuff there. So, all right. So back to what I was going to say. I was going to say we're going to do a one take Sally, MJ, but what's your scoop?
So we'll do one take everything except intro and outro. I will edit those in because that's going to be easier.
Okay.
And reason being,
going green. Greenwich.
Which is great until somebody says something during the accidentally, like somebody accidentally doesn't have their mic muted or,
Well, that's fine.
No.
All right. That's okay. It's you. So if that's something I was trying to take it off of your plate. So if you're okay doing it, that's fine.
Nope. I said that's intro and outro is easy. It's all the stuff in the middle that's hard.
All right. So I'll still add the applause and all that good stuff. But all right.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's going to still be a one take Sally without the intro and the outro, which means we're not doing breaks.
Phil, what do you mean add the applause? You're talking.
There's a sign. We have the sign for our studio audience. I have to push the button that turns that applause blink, turn it on. So
got it.
So they know, because otherwise I was telling you have to be quiet because Dr. Hobgood's going to be in tonight, and you can't be talking over him while he's talking. So, I was about to say, where's Maz? But there he is, right in the middle.
I learned that very, very early in class. Do not talk over Dr. Hobgood.
He was even saying that in Nebraska, huh?
Yeah. He just would look at you.
And you knew.
You couldn't stop me anyway, right?
All right, so no breaks. We're not going to take any breaks. I'm going to throw in every once in a while. I'll jump in with our little Windstorm Products spot. Like I'll just find a spot to throw that in. But we're not going to take breaks. So we're going to go. I'm going to do the opening. So MJ, you want me to still do the tease and then stop and then start again?
Because don't you want that to be the way it normally is?
I guess.
Because what we do is after you do that tease, then I find a little clip from the
if you wanted, I was gonna take that off your plate tonight and not worry about it. But if you want to add it,
go ahead. I guess if you want to do that, that's fine. Everybody's just got to be quiet during all that time because if anybody says anything, I can't fix it. And
okay,
right. And then the other thing is the outro. I will add that in. That's fine. That's easy.
You won't play that.
Easy.
That's fine.
Yeah,
you could easily play it right off the sound thing there. That's fine. All right. So what that means, guys, is I'm going to do the normal little pre-intro. But once I yell Stormfront Freaks podcast, I'm going to go right into our normal intro. So during this, you guys don't talk or mute yourself or something, right? So you're not coming in over that part. Right. So just be quiet during that part, I guess. And then I'll come in right away, do the normal ultra, what everyone's drinking. Maz, you're going to introduce Dr. Hobgood as our in-studio expert tonight. And then you can start with questions. You guys, it's really your show, all you guys and Dr. Hobgood to talk about the hurricane and whatever you want to bring up and discuss. while I'm working on maybe trying to get these other people on the phone. Let's use the private chat pretty heavily tonight, just so that we can communicate without having to actually do it on live on the air while we're trying to communicate. So jump on that private chat if you have a question you want to add, or if, whatever, just so we're communicating, and I'll let you know how I'm doing with hey, I've got so-and-so ready on the phone. And then after we get all of our Hurricane Ian discussion done, then Greg, I'll say something like, all right, well, let's change it up a little bit. Let's hit some hashtag weather fools, Hurricane Ian, hashtag weather fools, or something like that. And I'll start that little intro so you can explain what weather fools are. And then, so let's do this. Who has them? And then Greg, I'm going to just have you go like we talked about, right? Like you start with someone and they do one, you go to another person, they do one, just in case we all have a bunch of overlapping ones. One person doesn't steal them all, kind of a deal. Okay. So I do have weather fools. I know Serena does, right?
Yeah, I'll have them ready by then with like good links. Yeah.
How many do you have, Serena? Just ballpark.
Infinite. No, I have. There was the one, and maybe you guys already have it. I think it's one of the ones I tagged for Stormfront Freaksville. It was the people by the buoy in the water.
The southernmost point in Key West. That thing that was red at the top, and it was kind of it looks like a buoy, but it's
probably
it's the marker. It's the Key West marker for the southernmost point in the U.S.
Yes.
So that's fine. I had it too, and I probably had it before you, but that's okay.
You can have it. No, you can have it.
I'm kidding.
You can have that one.
All right.
I've got some others.
I don't care.
I don't know how many
you
I
use
have.
whatever. We'll just go one at a time.
Go back
and if it gets
until that awkward moment when nobody has any more.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then when we're done with that, MJ, you still have any mail stuff to cover?
I have a couple I can.
Okay. So we'll do that, and then I'll close it up. We will close it up from there. What am I missing?
So if you have Weather Fools, share your screens at some point before we start Weather Fools.
What I would recommend is everybody share their screen right now. Just share it. So that MJ can always just go to it. Like if you guys even have something hurricane related that you want to be talking about, or you want to show something, it's already pulled up, and so MJ can just pull it up, or you can say, MJ, can you share my screen or something? And
just ask. I see Phil and Greg and Serena. So
cool. Dr. Hobgood, did you have anything visual that you wanted to share tonight at all?
No, I don't.
Fair enough. Makes it simple. All right. Our VIPs, MJ, you can keep them in. We'll have you guys mute yourself or something, but
okay.
We'll keep you on. And Brady might pop up, maybe.
Yeah, I feel bad for Brady and what's going on with his family.
We'll see. All right.
Dr. Hobgood, are you drinking anything tonight?
Diet Coke, the drink of choice for 40 years now.
There you go.
If I remember correctly, there was some bourbon with it. No, wait. No, it was Dr. Harrington with his moonshine. That's what I remember.
There you go.
All right. And yes, Angela, I'm always a little spicy.
Very.
I'm always a little spicy. So let's do this.
Say hi to Josh. Josh is here watching.
Josh Burnham is here. Welcome, Josh. All right. Well, we're going to roll. We're going to do this one take Sally. It's going to be a little weird, but we are going to rock it. Right. So I had this stupid little LED light that's already running out of batteries. That's not helping me out much. Okay. We are coming in. 3, 2. Hey, Storm Freaks, it's Phil. And the historical category for Hurricane Ian has just made landfall. And we've got this special edition of the show with hurricane expert Dr. Jay Hobgood is in the studio. We've also going to be in a situation where we have some call-ins. We have some storm chasers, some residents that have been basically weathering the whole storm all day. But this is all going to happen today on episode 167 of the Stormfront Freaks podcast.
Going green. Greenwich. Saddling up. You got it, boss.
Hey, welcome to the most entertaining weather podcast. This is the award-winning Stormfront Freaks podcast. Thanks to our Patreon teammates for helping to support the show. We've got some new Storm Freaks like Alec, Kenzie, Deborah. Welcome to the team. Also, big shout out to those joining us live tonight. I know we got Josh is watching, and if you're watching too, go ahead and jump in on the chat. And we've got our VIPs in the background. Angela and Dan are here tonight. You can also experience Stormfront Freaks Raw like they do, which is you get to just be a part of the recording, stuff that gets edited out, all that good stuff. You can join our Patreon team with multiple level of perks and exclusive merch. You can find that link at stormfrontfreaks.com. So I'll tell you what, if you're listening to this show, this is really going to be a raw event tonight, like the whole thing. We're doing this different, and I'll explain the situation. So our guest that we had scheduled is a meteorologist for a national weather channel broadcast. And of course, there's this big hurricane that just decided it was going to happen during our recording of our podcast. Darn it, Ian. So they had to bow out, and in roughly 24 hours, we have decided to put together a Hurricane Ian-centric show. And so this is going to be a little different for us. Normally, we're kind of I don't know, what do you guys say? Like a Tonight Show, late show kind of, a guest, and we have some funny skits and stuff like that.
Exactly like the Tonight Show.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
We're very entertaining.
So
wacky stuff.
It's still going to be entertaining, as you can tell, but it's the structure is going to be a little different because it's really going to be a discussion. We're going to be talking about some things with Hurricane Ian and what's been going on. And we've also got some storm chasers that have been there. We're going to talk to tonight, some residents that kind of weathered out the storm. We're going to kind of talk to them to find out what's been going on. So it's a little different, but we start every show by finding out which of our co-hosts are joining us tonight. And we do that by finding out what they're drinking. It's like happy hour every time we record here. So just gives us a chance to see who's here and gives you a chance to find out what they're drinking. I am going to start, Greg, with you, our storm chaser up in Canada. What are you drinking, Greg?
Well, I'm actually channeling my inner Dr. J, and I've got my Diet Coke.
No, really?
Mm-hmm. I know.
Like I'm speechless. I'm speechless.
I know.
That's pretty good. All right, MJ, up in Minnesota, our Sky One coordinator. What are you drinking?
We're back to some Grain Belt Northeast by August Shell Brewing Company in a fancy Vikings cozy.
It's fancy like Applebee's. All right, Maz, our former meteorologist here in Cincinnati. What are you drinking?
I have a Leinenkugel Lemon Haze IPA, and it's good. Mm-hmm. It's good
Lemon
tonight.
haze.
It's chilly, and it's good.
Is that like purple haze? A little purple haze?
After several of them, yes.
Probably. All right, Serena, our meteorologist up in New Hampshire. What are you drinking?
I found this wasn't supposed to be a weather beer. I didn't think it was, but after today, I think it is. It's from Barrier Brewing Company, and it's called Uncharted Waters.
Ooh.
Found that one on the
too.
shelf and said, yes, that's appropriate for this evening.
Yes,
it is
it
an
is
IPA.
That, of course, is very good. All right, well, we know who's here, Maz. Let's get our expert also on the table.
That's right, Dr. Dr. J. I was doing basketball for a minute. Sorry about that. That's okay. Hey, he's my former professor, Dr. J. Hobgood. I've loved talking to him. He's awesome. That was back in the old Nebraska days, and he went on to Ohio State and big fame and all that stuff. So he is now retired from Ohio State, now emeritus associate professor. He served the director of atmospheric science program from 1995 to 2014. His research includes the causes of rapid intensification of hurricanes and the effects of hurricanes after landfall and the climatological patterns of hurricane activity. Sounds perfect. He's worked as a hurricane consultant for Nationwide Insurance since 2006, and he is our in-studio guest tonight to discuss Ian with us. So welcome, Dr. Hobgood. So glad to have you here tonight. I have two questions right off the bat for you. So I remember numerical modeling class that you had, which I never got the opportunity to take, but it was about hurricanes, obviously. And so with that, I guess my first question is, what's your take on Ian? And then my second question is, I've been hearing a lot about sea surface temperature. So this has been bugging me for a few days. What's it like? I mean, with the numerical models, is it even like a 1/10 of a degree warmer with the sea surface temperatures? Is there a scale or something that causes the intense? How does that all relate? And is there a scale? Is there like a Richter scale where it goes up every degree by a certain? I mean, tell me all about that, because I missed that from your class, by the way.
Well, let me take your second question first and talk about the sea surface temperatures. It's not a direct correlation between the temperature going up a degree and the hurricane going up so many miles per hour. What it is that first you have to have a certain threshold. So the ocean has to be warm enough so you can get thunderstorms that are tall enough to build into a hurricane. In the deep tropics, that's 26 degrees Celsius. If you get into higher latitudes, say off the northeast coast of the US, it can be a little colder and you can still get a hurricane. But hurricanes get most of their energy from the upper ocean. And that's why the sea surface temperature is so important. And to get a really intense hurricane, like a major hurricane, you probably need sea surface temperatures at least 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. But it's not just the very top of the ocean that matters, because hurricanes with the strong winds will mix cooler water to the surface. So it also matters how deep the warm layer is on top of the ocean. And unfortunately, in the case of Ian, two places where the warm water is deepest is in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, south of Cuba, and in the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, where you have the loop current, southwest of Florida. So Ian went over two places where there was a lot of energy in the upper ocean, and it was able to extract that energy, and that allowed it to intensify rapidly to a major hurricane as it approached Cuba. Then after it moved north of Cuba, it went through a quick eye wall replacement cycle last night, and then was able again to tap the energy in the southeast Gulf of Mexico and rapidly intensify to a strong Category 4 hurricane before it hit southwest Florida. So that's the role that the sea surface temperature plays. And like I said, it isn't linear. And you can't say that if the sea surface temperature goes up 1 degree Celsius, the wind speed will go up 20 miles an hour. Because hurricanes, of course, get their energy from the ocean, but they're in the atmosphere. So the atmospheric environment matters too. Mm-hmm. And the other problem with Ian was that it was in a very favorable atmospheric environment. South of Cuba, there wasn't much wind shear. Once it got north of Cuba, there's a trough over the eastern U.S., but unfortunately, that trough actually helped with the upper level divergence today. And that pumped away mass and allowed the surface pressure to drop all the way down to 937 millibars.
That's something I want to talk about. I got to jump in here because I read a lot of the forecast discussions leading up to this, and I was following it. I was looking at the cold front. We were talking about the shear. It was in many National Hurricane Center forecast discussions that this high shear environment to the northwest was going to break it down. What did we miss? I mean, it's like, what? Because clearly that it helped. It would hurt, and it did not. So you've hit what we missed.
You've hit on one of the classic sort of knotty problems in hurricane meteorology. When does a trough hurt, and when does a trough help a hurricane? And Lance Bozart from SUNY Albany used to talk about good troughs and bad troughs. I mean, it's the same issue that you were talking about. Because you're right, and this is what we were sort of expecting, was that the trough would cause southwesterly winds in the upper levels Those would blow towards the top of Ian. That would create more wind shear. And the forecast was that Ian would get to Category 4, and then it might weaken back to Category 3 as it approached Southwest Florida. But sometimes if the upper level trough is in the wrong place, if you're a resident of Florida today, the upper level winds blow toward Ian, but northeast of Ian, they actually help pull mass away. They actually enhance the upper level divergence. So instead of the shear causing Ian to weaken, you pull more mass out, the surface pressure drops, and the wind speed picks up. And that's what we had to happen today. I don't know if you remember Hurricane Michael in 2018 that hit Northwest Florida near Mexico Beach as a Category 5, right? It was the same situation, right? If you go back and look at some of the discussions just before Michael hit Northwest Florida, there was talk about a trough, wind shear, and it used to be, up until recent years, most storms moving toward the northern Gulf Coast would weaken because you'd have more wind shear and some dry air would wrap around the southern side and they'd start to weaken. Well, Michael did much similar to what Ian did today. Rapidly intensified to Cat 5 just before it hit Mexico Beach. So there's a real difficult question, and even the numerical models have a hard time with this. What's the influence of the trough going to be? Is it going to cause wind shear, or is it going to enhance divergence?
Dr. Hobgood, when you were talking about Michael, I remember we had Storm Chaser on who positioned to chase that storm based on the fact that it was a Category 2-3 hurricane a few hours prior, and it rapidly intensified, and they ended up getting caught in a pretty nasty situation.
Well, I'll tell you what, Greg, speaking of storm chasers, so we do actually have live on the phone. We've got Brandon Clement is with us, and Brandon was actually chasing Ian in Cuba initially. Brandon, welcome to the show, and maybe tell us how Cuba was your initial target.
Well, initially, and at the time of the decision, the models kept shifting to the west. So we figured, you know what, let's go rock this thing in Cuba and get back and make it for Florida landfall. So we had more time, given it was to go up towards Big Bend area north of Tampa. And on that track, it would give us the flexibility to fly back into Miami and drive to Tampa where my car was. So that was the lead decision, thinking, we can double dip on this thing. But that's not how it went.
So, well, that's a good segue. What I guess first off, tell us where in Cuba. I guess where were you? What did you experience? Yeah, let's start with that.
So it was Jonathan Petramala and I had him on with us just a minute ago. His phone's dropping. We're in Mexico now, but we were in Pinar del Rio. We kind of chose that as a town where you had a main highway going into it. If you went any farther west, the chances of getting out were very slim because the roads got down to 2-lane. We had a 4-lane road with a boulevard going in. We checked that out. We're like, all right, no matter what, at least there's going to be contraflow places where we can get around trees and stuff like that. So we had it all planned out. Going to fly into Cuba. Got contact with some of Jonathan's contacts, and they knew people in Cuba. They were going to come meet us at the airport, bring us SIM cards, have a car with extra gas, and just be our guides the whole time. But then Cuba happened. So it turned into, they found us a driver instead, who ended up just being a random guy at the airport. And we had it planned out. We got him a room at the hotel where we were staying, where he was just going to drive us the whole time. And, well, first they were supposed to help us try and get a rental car. That just didn't happen. The Cuban cab driver gets to the hotel, drops us off, gets his money there, and then tells us about his sick wife and how he gets to go back. we look at each other at that point. We're like, all right, do we just ride back to and just call it quits right now, or do we get this thing to go? Because we're stuck there with no car, and we already know the gas situation in Cuba. I mean, we had to wait hour-long line just to get gas to go down there. Because we made our cab driver top off, and of course he's playing along because he just wants his money before he bails on us. So he sits in the gas station. We're like, no, top off, top off, top off. So we knew the gas situation going in. We're like, who's going to have a drive enough gas to drive 100 miles back? And we knew we were in trouble. We made it that far. The plan for the beginning was to play on the east side of it, not actually get eyed by it. That way we could make sure we could get back. And everything started shifting to the east. And that's kind of where the fun began. So we're in this hotel, 1929 built hotel, marble staircases, solid concrete, so I was never worried. But then right before the storm starts getting bad, they're like, no, we need to lock the doors at a certain time. I'm like, no, we can't do that. That's not what we do. So we ended up having to lock ourselves in the hotel, but luckily these doors were like 10-foot tall or 12-foot tall French doors with all glass. We're like, okay, this isn't going to end well for them, so we'll just shoot from inside the hotel. And when that eye wall came, it was very fast. It was a lot like Hurricane Zeta. It was moving pretty quick and intensifying, but the inner eye wall was really compact. So from about a 2-hour period where winds were less than 30 miles an hour to we were in the middle of the eye. But that 2 hours in between, it was everything that building could take. Trying to bust the doors open. They had multiple pieces of furniture lining up. The windows, several of the windows got lost. Of course, we're hearing sheet metal get thrown around everywhere. Even if we could have got out, it wouldn't matter. We had zero light to shoot with. Everything was total blackness. The hotel did have a generator, so we had light at the hotel with nothing else. And amazingly, the Wi-Fi actually held up until about halfway through, 3/4 of the way through the eye wall. It started dropping off, but then came back. And then when we got in the eye, I mean, we could have centered that eye track any better. We were in that eye for an hour. I mean, it was calm for an hour. We had time to go walk around, shoot damage, see what all happened, get back to the hotel. And the back side of the eye wasn't nearly as strong as the front side as normal. But I think that was a different case today in Florida. But yeah, it was pretty wild as far as the storm goes. But at the time, and every step of the way, the Category 3 hurricane was like number 6 or 7 on our list of concerns.
Yeah. So so when after it kind of went, did you stay in the same location, I guess, during the whole path?
We stayed in the same location during the whole path, except during the eye. We got out and ran the streets and just shot as much video as we could. Got back in the hotel when the second half of the eye came. Got a little bit of a nap, and then started working on trying to get a ride back because our flight. So we flew in Monday, and our flight was scheduled out Tuesday afternoon because we knew if we didn't get out really quick, then we're going to get cut off by the airports closing in Florida. And we weren't expecting the damage to be that bad in Havana because, I mean, it's 100 miles away, and we were supposed to be 40, 50 miles away from the eye. But we ended up getting the eye, so Havana actually started getting some wind, knocked the electricity out, I mean, all the way through the country just about. And trying to get a cab involved some really shady stuff, some bribes. We, at one point, were about a mile from our hotel, and we had this one guy waving us down, asking us if we wanted a taxi. We're like, yeah. He didn't actually have a taxi or car or any form of transportation.
That's a good sign.
So, yeah. We're like, this is going really well. The guy next to him's in a homeless stance in the corner, just shivering. I'm like, yeah, this is not going to go well. But you know what? Let's see what happens. So we called that murder taxi. And when they showed up at our hotel 30, 45 minutes later, I guess it was, we gave it a whirl. No, I'm sorry. We actually took a cab with them right then. We're supposed to go to our hotel, and we were going the wrong direction. and then the tree and power line and stuff were down. It was feeling really, really sketchy. Tree and power line were blocked. Like, hold on, we're gonna shoot this. We jumped out like half like we were gonna shoot it, and then there was some other people around, so we just kind of stayed next to them and just bailed. And yeah, because that was definitely going to go the wrong direction for half of us. I'm not sure which half, but it was going to go wrong for half of us. And made our way back to the hotel. Waited on another guy that promised he had all the connections in the world, could get a taxi, no problem. And that didn't happen either. And finally ran into this guy from Mexico, of all places, who lives in Texas and was down there visiting his girlfriend. And he's like, look, I got a guy. I have no idea if he'll show up. I usually pay him $100 to take us to the airport from here. I'm like, tell him 150. Let's just get him motivated. Actually, I told him to tell him more, but he was like, no, don't do that because I don't want to pay more next time. I'm like, all right, tell him 150, something to get him motivated. And right when we thought that was going to fall through, a 1957 Ford Fairlane in perfect condition rolls up. And there was our ride back to the airport. Here we are shooting damage video, jumping medians, and driving around trees and under power lines and everything else to get out of there in a 1957 Ford Fairlane for our Cuban experience. But getting to Havana was just the beginning. Just the beginning. Our flight got canceled on the way. We had no Wi-Fi, no cell service. The SIM cards that we got our people to get from the very beginning didn't work. They worked for calls if you wanted to call somebody in Cuba, but the data didn't work and they wouldn't work for international calls. So we were just like, we were in the Stone Ages. And of course, there's total blackout through the country.
So Brandon, now that you're out of Cuba, so what would you do differently now if you look back and go, man, I would have changed this, and this? What would you do?
Yeah, Jonathan Petramala and I were just talking about on the cab ride back from dinner. Right now we're both smoking our Cuban cigar, kind of celebrating both the hurricane and getting out of Cuba, because that was really that was the drama there. It got into more dark, shady stuff and stories for another day. But so we were like, will we do it again? And I looked at him and was like, I would not do this again tomorrow. Maybe the day after. So absolutely. Next time we're going to Cuba, we're doing it right. We know what we did wrong. We identified our mistakes really quick, and we know what to do next time. So we're going to look forward to it.
Well, Brandon, I don't know. I know you got Jonathan on the line there. It sounded like Jonathan was supposed to have all your connections. So,
yeah, you need a new case partner.
Yeah, Jonathan dropped off. His phone dropped, and I'm going to hand him the phone right here.
Got it.
Hey, guys, I heard the conversation. Sorry, my phone dropping off, which has kind of been the theme of the last couple of days. At least we have conversation.
So this was my question, Jonathan. Brandon made it sound like you were his Cuban connection. Yeah. I don't know about using you as a travel agent moving forward.
Well, in these situations when you're going into a place like Cuba, I've been to Cuba twice before, but I'll be honest with you, it was a different world even than 3 years ago. Right before the pandemic was the last time I went. And Cuba today is not the same Cuba that was even just 3 years ago before the pandemic. I mean, the first time I went was during the Obama administration when they had reopened the country sort of to tourism. And there was a lot of optimism. There was a lot of happiness and excitement from the people, a lot of joy. And then again, when I went back in 2019, it was kind of a different feel. Donald Trump had closed things back off. So people were hurting again, and there was a little less optimism, a little more concern for their future. This time, in the words of our host that we were able to find yesterday, he said it. I asked him about 1990s after the fall of the Soviet Union versus 1980 when all the Cubans left and came to Miami. He said that Cuba today is worse than any other time he's been alive, and he's around 60 years old.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what it is. And so this hurricane basically just amplified everything.
Yeah.
To the point where, you expected before to go to Cuba, and people are out to try and take your money, which is fine. I mean, they're hustling, they're trying to make money, but it wasn't in a mean spirit. But this time it was a little bit different. You could tell just the attitudes shifted. There was more desperation with the people. And I mean, you're seeing lines a couple 100 meters long waiting for bread this morning. You think, oh, that must be hurricane. No. That's just a normal everyday situation, waiting for gas lines, everyday normal situation. You know, I mean, it's really, really digressed there, and it's really, really sad to see. And again, to have a hurricane like that in such an important region that actually produces money for the country, their tobacco region, it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
even more than it is. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm glad you guys are certainly safe, and wish you a safe rest of the trip home from Mexico. But I appreciate you both taking the time to kind of share your experience, and we'll get you guys back on again.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Brandon.
Hey guys, have any of you seen any footage coming out of Cape Coral? Because looking at the map, you know, the topography there, I mean, it's all canals. And when I was looking at this hurricane making landfall, I thought, man, that's where the storm surge is going to be the worst. But I have not seen anything. I've seen Naples, I've seen Fort Myers, and all these different places, but I haven't seen anything from Cape Coral. Anybody?
No, and it's terrifying. The silence is deafening in a lot of ways that way. I think tomorrow morning it's going to be horrific when people finally can get there and the water recedes and you see what happens, because there has been nothing today. I am scared.
Okay, so it's not just me that couldn't find anything.
No, there's nothing coming out of Cape Coral. Nothing.
So I was Serena, I was doing some research and I was trying to find out what's the average elevation in Cape Coral and Fort Myers. And I thought it was a typo that I read. The average elevation is 3 feet above sea level. And I was thinking, you know, if you look at the direction of travel of that hurricane, you look at the southeast corner of that eye wall, that had to be where surge was going to be the worst.
And did you see this graphic? I have it pulled up on my screen. I don't know if we can do the screen share. There's this crazy graphic that shows Cape Coral and Fort Myers, and you can see what it looks like now and the lay of the land in Captiva and Pineland and all these places, and it drags across, and you see what it's going to look like with the storm surge, and it's gone. Cape Coral disappears.
Yeah, and the number of there's more canals than streets in Cape Coral.
Yeah,
that's not good in a hurricane situation.
No, it's really bad, you know. And I actually have a friend. I don't know if she's someone that we'll get to speak with tonight, but she's a friend of mine who is in Cape Coral. And when she told me that she had not left, I had some 4-letter words for her. But I hope she's safe. And I don't know if we'll get to speak with her tonight. And I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything from anyone in Cape Coral, because it's got to be catastrophic there.
It'll be interesting to see what First Light shows tomorrow, for sure. I have a question for the good Dr. J here. My question has to do with we've heard a lot about Ian being a Category 4 hurricane at landfall, but is there ever a situation where, like with tornadoes, they do a preliminary, you know, it's an EF3, and then the teams go in, they survey the damage, and then they adjust that rating? Is it possible to do that with hurricanes, where you go back and you look at some of the data points that maybe got overlooked in haste and change the category of the hurricane?
Yeah, that does happen. It happens on 2 time scales. The National Hurricane Center will prepare a tropical cyclone report on every named storm. So after the hurricane season is over, they'll get together and they'll collect all the data, and not just the meteorological data, but the data on the losses, the casualties, and they'll put all that into the tropical cyclone report. And of course, they may get some additional meteorological data that they didn't have when they were writing the advisories today. And based on that information, they could adjust the rating of the hurricane after the season is over, based on, new information. So that's one possibility. It won't happen tomorrow or next week, but it could happen sometime after the hurricane season ends in December. There's also a group at the Hurricane Center in NOAA that's working on a reanalysis project. And they went back and looked at some historical hurricanes, and they're doing it systematically over the years. And they were the group that many years after Hurricane Andrew, which occurred in 1992 and was rated as a Cat 4 at the time, re-rated Andrew as a Cat 5 in their reanalysis. So it's not like
there is a historical precedent then for that having happened.
Right. There's a procedure they go through, but it's not like tornadoes where they're out there doing the damage survey the next day or several days later, and you may get a re-rating. And actually with tornadoes, that's the official rating that comes out then. And you see a lot of stuff on social media in informal, well, based on the damage, it looks like an EF3 or so on. But the official rating comes out after the damage surveys by the National Weather Service. With hurricanes, it takes a longer time frame to do that. But there are some famous cases where some hurricanes the ratings have been changed up or down one Saffir-Simpson category.
Well, I think if you've lost your home to a hurricane or a tornado, the rating really doesn't matter, right? Like on an individual case-by-case basis, nobody really cares what the rating is. I think it's just guys like us, people like us that, nerd out on this stuff that really care. But ultimately, if your home is gone, your home is gone, and the rating of the hurricane doesn't matter.
Well, you're right to a point. I mean, that if you get your house leveled, or if you've got a storm surge in your house, you don't care. The hurricane doesn't care, right? It's just obeying the laws of physics.
Right.
But there are emergency management plans.
Got it.
That do have evacuations based on, is it a major hurricane? Is it a Cat 3? Or is it a Cat 2? So the rating does have impacts on how some people treat hurricanes.
For sure.
It's one of the problems with the Saffir-Simpson scale, though, right? It's not like you're rating a tornado after the fact and people's house is already leveled. I mean, they can't evacuate when the EF rating comes out. The Saffir-Simpson scale only has 5 categories, right? You got 110 mile an hour hurricane is a Cat 2. Everybody thinks, well, it's not a major hurricane, it's a hurricane, but 115 miles an hour, right? 5 miles an hour up, it's a Cat 3. Suddenly it's a major hurricane, right? It's a big deal. All sorts of emergency management plans go into action.
Right. And also the scale also doesn't take into account the storm surge, the rainfall amounts, and all the other issues that are involved in a hurricane. All we're talking about is just wind speed and I agree.
And that's a good segue, Greg, because we actually have on the phone, we have a resident from Fort Myers. Scott Sorensen is with us, and he actually, he and his wife Teresa decided that they were going to stay and ride out the storm, and certainly has experienced and currently is experiencing, for example, some of that surge and everything else. But Scott, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. I guess tell us whereabouts are you in Fort Myers, and what led to your decision for you guys to say, oh, you're going to ride it out?
Well, hi guys, it's good to be here, and that is a very difficult question right now, but we're looking at the forecast. We're talking about where we are. We are in a second floor condo, kind of a fourplex. So there's 2 second floor, 2 first floors. And even up until last night or yesterday afternoon, I was looking at some elevation charts, sizing things up, and, do we drive east to Miami or do we stay? We have a generator, we have food, we're our floor of our house is actually about 25, 26 feet above sea level, as best I could estimate. So we decided to stay. We got our storm shutters up, which is a very stressful event. My wife spent all day Monday trying to find somebody that would do it. And thankfully, a couple guys came out and did us and some of our neighbors and really, really helped out in that way. So we stayed, and not much we could have changed, but we're ready to start the generator and keep the fridge cold and get some fans going. But it's been a rough day.
So I guess tell us a little bit what was your experience early on? I know we had actually been communicating a little bit as the front part of the storm was coming, but I guess differentiate between what your feelings were and what you were experiencing as the storm was coming, and then at what point did that kind of transition, that excitement kind of transition a little bit to some skepticism and your experience at the tail end of the storm? Right.
Yeah. So we, looking at 18 hours ago, 24 hours ago, people talking about a pretty good Category 3 storm hitting Tampa, Sarasota area. We're like, oh, those the east side of the wall, the winds, which we still got, obviously even worse. Can we do that? What's it look like? We talked to some of our neighbors here in our condo development, and a lot of them did stay as well. And the difficulty was, as things progressed, the storm got tighter to our shoreline, and obviously got much, much larger with the 150, 155 winds that just about put it at a Category 5. And so the cell signal, which we use on our phones to watch the weather and some of those things, started to deteriorate this afternoon after the power went out, but we could still get some things and communicate with family and friends. But looking at the weather deteriorating, and the last time we watched our local news and weather report was somewhere around 2 o'clock, 2:30. And, you could tell that it was going to be bigger and worse than anybody thought, really. And it was going to hang out here and pound us for a while too, because we were getting those upward east side of the wall winds right on the shoreline, pushing water in, and the wind was expanding, but the eye was staying over the warm Gulf water. So the strength was maintaining. And that, when I started to kind of put those two things together, we started to get a little bit worried. And then the shutters started to rattle even more, and the wind was really, really bucking things here for a while.
So, Scott, how does Miami look now?
Miami, we've vacationed in Deerfield Beach 3 times from our hometown in Minnesota the last 15 years, and we actually had that hotel pulled up yesterday morning. But at the same time, all the water would have come up to our garage, would have flooded things that actually I moved this afternoon. And it would have been, all the same, yet we couldn't get back here for this amount of time. So yes, we would have been more comfortable sitting there, but we would have been really concerned about the people here. And we actually brought up our lower level, our neighbor, up to our house a few hours ago through waist deep water around the driveway, and from one garage to the other, because our front doors are storm boarded up. So all things being equal, there's some good reasons we stayed as well.
So real quick, describe right now, if I know it's obviously dark out, but as you're looking, describe what you kind of have seen before sunset and all that.
Yeah, as it came down. So our drive, I mentioned to Phil that our driveway in front of us, or our road in front of us, is, I looked at 3 or 4 elevation charts last night, and best estimates probably 15, 16 feet. Our garage level is about 4 feet above that. So I'm thinking around 19 or 20. And that was almost waist deep water to the front of our garage. So that's 20 plus. And, I couldn't believe it until I could see it. And then I'm like, oh yeah, how can this not happen? This wind is hitting us from the southwest for 5 hours at 75 plus, 75 plus, then 100 plus, and then a little bit of 75 plus. And so as the sun set, looking out the water for about an hour and a half, maintained that garage 2.5 feet in the garage level. And our front windows are smaller, narrower windows. They're hurricane windows, proof up to, I think, 140. So those are not boarded up. And I could look out to the street and see my neighbor's plants in his front yard, and the water leveled off there for about, it got to be a half an hour, then an hour, and then an hour and a half. And I'm like, okay. And that was about sunset where I could still see that it was about an hour and a half. And now the winds, thankfully, have died down. Our shutters are not rattling at the moment. And so they've really must have calmed down pretty good. When I look out those same front windows, I see a glow to the east, which is down Alico Road toward the Interstate 75. But I also saw and can see a glow to the west, which is kind of toward looking right at Fort Myers Beach area, probably 6 miles away, 5 or 6 miles away. There's a glow over the houses. Obviously, our neighborhood is eerily dark. But except for a few, you can tell there's some battery powered lights and candles on when you look in these front storm windows that we have.
I know Serena was asking the question. Go ahead, Serena.
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So I was on mute because I'm smart. So you said you're at an elevation about 20 some feet, or around 20 feet above ground, above sea level, and you still had waist deep water at your garage.
The garage, as best estimate, and I did look at some very modern on my phone elevation sites last night. My best estimate of our garage level was like 19 feet, I guess, or almost 20. Just by the variety of things I looked at, they were all saying the same thing, between 17 and 21 feet, kind of where our house is located or where our condo is located.
Wow.
And so I figured street level was 15, 16. And again, the garage floor was just about 20. I'd probably a little shy. And then, when you go out here, we are about 200 yards, maybe 300 yards west of Highway 41 or Tamiami Trail, which is the big north-south from Fort Myers to Naples versus the interstate. But and there is canals and some locations just about 3/4 of a mile to our west where you can put a boat in, where the houses are on the canals, but we're not closely connected to that. There is several walls and mounds, kind of retaining wall type places between us and there. So it had to push up and through some of those areas as well. But, when you've got this big of a storm and you've got that flow from the west and from the south, as long as we did, it just kept pushing seawater up and in, and almost like a tidal wave, really, a 20-foot, 30-foot tidal wave.
Wow. And you said like 6 miles ballpark from the actual ocean?
No, there's a bay. So we're south of Fort Myers a little bit. We're between Fort Myers and Bonita Springs. And so there's a large bay that comes in there, but there's barrier islands, Lover's Key and San Carlos Island, which is Fort Myers Beach, basically. And there's maybe 200-yard path, the bridge that goes through there, maybe almost a half a mile. And that's the only place where water can really come through to get towards us and up into the canals that come our way. And then we're still 3/4 of a mile from the nearest canal, where the houses are obviously right on the canal. So, and we're up about up 8 or 10 feet. Our road is up 8 or 10 feet from those houses as well.
Wow.
My wife and I bike out there a little bit, so we kind of get a feel for that. It's obviously everything's really flat down here, but even, that over most of a mile, you get a 6-foot raise, you can hardly tell, but we are up a little bit. And then, of course, thankfully being on the second floor, we have another 9.5 feet, which, if it got up to our floor, most of the southern third of Florida would be underwater because we're all the same height.
Wow.
I think the airport is 29 feet above sea level, or 33 feet above sea level.
I heard today that Bonita Springs was basically now a part of the Gulf.
Yeah, and Naples, all the canals in Naples, and you will hear tomorrow. I can't imagine. I feel bad for Cape Coral because the way the wind was lifting up and in the big bay that opens up to the Caloosahatchee River, had such a storm surge. Sanibel, the highest point in Sanibel is like 9 feet. So Sanibel was total water. There was no land above water. There was only house rooftops and garages and stuff. And then that pushed up into the Caloosahatchee, which is the river that runs from Lake Okeechobee. Usually runs this way, of course, right? And they've been getting quite a bit of rain. So there's water that's trying to run out, but 120, 150 mile an hour winds are pushing that water back in. And that was just, I can't imagine what they're going through right now up along that river and Cape Coral area, because it's so low already. There's so much of it's so low. Everybody's on a canal in Cape Coral.
So last question for you, Scott. I know you're from Minnesota, and I remember part of my conversation with you was it's just getting hyped. It can't be any worse than the blizzards back in Minnesota. What are your comparisons of the two now at this point?
Oh boy. Well, the cold that comes with one of those blizzards that come through Minnesota, spending some time in western Minnesota, central Minnesota, and even up in Moorhead, which is just about North Dakota, and all those winds. The wind for a while. So one of our shutters, kind of released its top on the lanai, and that was when the wind was coming from the south. That's where our lanai is, south and west. And it was bending that top down and bringing in a bunch of pressure. It actually blew out a little bit of our, we have a big sliding doors. It actually blew out the bottom of the door. Thankfully, there's about 2 inches of catch in the top of the door, so it didn't tip. And we pushed a mattress and wedged a couch against it, but it was, and so my wife and I were in a room away from that, but I could start to feel my ears pressurized like you were on a plane or going up and down a hill. And I'm like, something isn't quite right. And I came out in our main room and looked over there, and that sliding screen door had pushed open about an inch. And that's when things were really whipping in middle of the afternoon today, that when we got towards 100 mile per hour winds. And so looked at that, and then other things started to whistle in the room that used to not whistle. Actually, one of our there's a little canister that goes around your sprinkler heads on the fire sprinklers, and that dropped out of the roof onto one of our couches. And I'm like, where did that come from? I look up, oh yeah, there it was. Wow. And things were whistling and moving, and that wind was coming in, and it had to go out somewhere. Our toilet water was getting pushed out, so there was almost none left. It was really, that was the toughest time, I guess. So and I've been in some old homes with the windows rattling for a day and a half, 2-day ice and snowstorm up in Minnesota. And it was very similar. And then you walk out and you look and you see, do you see 6 feet of snow? Do you see 3 feet of water at your garage steps? Very similar to some of the worst snowstorms. But I think I actually really feel bad, because I think people it's going to be pretty catastrophic what happens to the people, the many, many, many people that are in worse places than we are. Because I can't believe what happened to us.
Phil, it's got to be bad when you have a toilet storm surge. I'm just saying.
That's exactly what we have. Yep.
Well, I'll tell you what, Scott, thanks for your time. I'm glad you and Teresa have weathered it to this point successfully, and I wish you the best, certainly moving forward with this. But thanks for taking the time tonight to share your story.
Yeah, it was quite a crazy story. A little worse than we thought, but we thank everybody for all their kind wishes and prayers and love. But it's quite a story to tell, that's for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you. Well, I'll tell you what, if you live anywhere, a tropical storm can affect you in your home. Don't let the next storm catch you unprepared. Whether your home is wood, it's concrete, or brick, we trust and recommend windstorm products for all your hurricane hardware you need for your storm shutters. Windstorm Products is the world's largest online distributor of hurricane hardware and shutter installation tools, and they even offer a $5 flat rate shipping to all 50 states. They even carry these cool, and I want to share this. I'm going to share my screen with you guys because this is all really, when I saw what they had, I'm like, are you kidding me? I've never seen anything like this. So it's called a flood barrier door dam. And instead of using a bunch of sandbags to block the water from entering your door or windows or whatever, this is actually a dam that you attach to your doors or your windows, and it can fit whatever size. And it basically serves the purpose of trying to use sandbags. And I thought, wow, that thing's kind of cool. You guys see that?
That's awesome. I noticed that earlier on social media too. I saw it. It's really cool.
So that was interesting. Anyway, visit windstormproducts.com now for your one-stop hurricane hardware shop. Don't get caught. It's the official supplier of the Stormfront Freaks podcast.
I would like to ask the doctor a question again. I got another one. You have some background or knowledge or working with insurance companies. Talk about the cost of a storm like this in an area, South Florida. Of course, no stranger to big storms, but talk about the cost for a minute.
Okay. I looked up Hurricane Charlie earlier today because Charlie hit the same area. It made landfall near Port Charlotte and Punta Gorda. Charlie was a Cat 4 when it hit in 2004. Now, Charlie was a little bit weaker than Ian was today, and Charlie was a lot smaller. I mean, Charlie was a small hurricane. In the tropical cyclone report that put out by the National Hurricane Center, it said that Charlie caused $6.7 billion of insured damage in Florida. And the general rule of thumb is only half of all property damage is insured. So that means it probably caused $13-14 billion worth of damage when Charlie hit. Now that was in 2004. Clearly, there's been a lot of population moving to that area in the last 18 years, a lot more property and so on. Plus, Ian's bigger and stronger than Charlie was. So roughly, and I'm a meteorologist, I'm not an insurance expert, so take this for what it's worth, but you probably want to start in the $10 to $15 billion range and go up when you think about potential damage from Ian.
And I think it's even more than that. Sorry, Maz.
No, go ahead.
So Karen Clark, who is a very famous meteorologist who actually started catastrophe modeling for insurance, and actually blew the first warnings when Hurricane Andrew came in and said, hey, this is going to be really, really bad. She's someone who's been trusted and respected for many, many years in insurance and meteorology. She said this was a $30 billion event. That was her forecast.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with it. I'm just trying to, be conservative and be on the low end. I don't want to be I mean, people who know me know I don't like to hype things if I don't have solid data to back it up. So yeah, I mean, that sounds very reasonable to me.
No, Dr. J, I want to see you do the pinky lift and say $1 billion bazillion dollars. Let's channel Dr. Evil here.
So Jay, is being a consultant, is there any situation where you would have to pay any of that billions of dollars yourself?
No, I don't think so. I just try to help them understand the risk leading up to the hurricane.
So you had mentioned though insured value, and then some properties are uninsured. Can you imagine guys living in a place like Cape Coral or Fort Myers and not having that insurance in place? What would you do? I mean, you're going to have to go bankrupt or I mean, it's going to destroy people.
Oh, Greg, don't get me started on my soapbox. Less than 10% of people in this country have flood insurance that need it. Less than 10%. And the ones that do, most of them don't have the coverage that they need. The protection gap is insane. It is huge. Yet flood is like the most consistent peril that can happen anywhere, where everything else is regional. Flood can happen anywhere, anytime. And since 1996, 99% of zip codes in the United States have seen a catastrophic flood.
Okay, so can they even, if you live at sea level on the west coast of Florida, can you actually get flood insurance?
It will be very expensive.
Extremely expensive.
As it should
a lot of
be,
places
though.
won't give it to you. A lot of places won't.
A lot of places won't. But if you can get it, it will be extremely expensive, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's really difficult. The places I really struggle with it are, say, like New Orleans, right, where you don't have these $10 million homes built right on the beach, and you've got people that have been there for generations that don't have the ability to leave, who don't have the financial means and lose everything in a hurricane. What do you do for them? That's a different situation, right? You build a $10 million home on the beach, you better be able to afford rebuilding it or not care about what gets swept out to sea. It's just it's a weird problem, but it's not even coastal. It's a nationwide issue, and it's a huge problem in this country.
I thought it was interesting watching live streams of today and from various different sources. I didn't see a single roof fly off of a building, and that's kind of like the money shot for storm chasers. So you know that if it happened, they were going to be shooting it. But literally, like, it seems like the building codes, the strength of the homes, all of those things, all the research and learning that's happened. Dr. Hobgood mentioned about, that area of the country getting so many more people over the last 18 years. I suspect that the way those homes are built and those buildings are built to withstand those strong hurricanes may mitigate some of those costs, but I'm just a photographer.
Are the tie downs getting better? I know. I think it is code now down there for all that, but I mean,
I didn't see a single roof fly off of a building.
I did.
I did. You just haven't seen Twitter enough. Greg.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I did see one floating down a street.
Right.
Seriously.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen a couple.
Jay wanted to say something there. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was going to say a couple of things. One, Florida strengthened their building codes after Andrew in 1992. So that's helped in one case. And the other thing is, this area was hit by Charlie, like I said, in 2004. And then they just had Hurricane Irma a few years ago. So there has been some reconstruction down there, and hopefully reconstruction with stronger materials in the last 20 years.
What about elevating homes? Is that a standard practice, building on stilts and all that kind of stuff?
Well, it's been a while since I've been to Southwest Florida, but I don't think it's as much of a practice there as it is in the Mississippi Gulf Coast and around New Orleans. Right? You go along, you go to some Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, or someplace like that, and all of the homes are raised up above. And New Orleans had raised homes before Katrina, and then they've raised homes even higher since Katrina. So some places, I don't think in Southwest Florida, they do that nearly as much.
What about snake insurance? I heard Brady. He said they got all the floodwaters bringing all the snakes in their garage.
Guys, did you see the video of the shark today in Fort Myers?
No.
There was a video of a shark. I'll see if I can find it for Weather Fools. Video of a shark literally swimming down this street, flapping its tail. It was wild. It was.
I did see that. There were a few fake ones. There's a lot of fake ones that get retweeted
on the internet.
The street one, no, right? I know. I've even seen the orca whale coming out of the. I don't know. I think the shark. There's a shark swimming in the street one that actually looks legit. There's a whole bunch of fake ones. The subway one is fake. The whale is fake. There's a bunch but I think there was one actual real one out there.
Yeah, you're killing me now, Serena.
All right, well, hey guys, I'm going to jump in. We've got Max Olson, Storm Chaser, on the phone with us right now. Max, how you doing, man? You there?
Hopefully you guys can hear me.
There you go.
We're here. Can you guys hear me right?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out a little bit, but we got you. Where'd you start and where are you now?
Yeah, I apologize. If you guys can hear me, we're here in Port Charlotte right now, and we're on the back half of the storm. We're actually almost out of it. We're still just getting hammered here.
So where'd you start?
We started the day here at this hotel that we're actually staying at right now. We meandered west towards we meandered east towards, let's see, where were we? I honestly can't remember. We went to different places today. One of the main things that we saw, though, was extreme winds, but lack of surge where we were at, because we were on the northern island. However, we placed some unmanned cannon probes down south on Fort Myers Beach, which, as you guys have probably from social, absolutely inundated with storm surge. I mean, easily 10, 12 feet. So we're going to try and make our way and see if we can retrieve those. One of the craziest things, storm, back to our hotel, the first, usually in all the storms that I've chased, the front half of the storm, the first eye wall, when you usually are having onshore flow, is the most intense. This was, I mean, the first half was intense, but the second half where we were at was absolutely mind-blowing. Some of the most intense wind gusts I've ever felt as a storm chaser. I'm guessing probably in the 120 to 130 range. Our hotel is completely fallen apart. Before I came out here to try and get some video uploaded, I had a drip coming down on my bed because the roof peeled off, and water's pouring through the third floor, down into the second floor where we're to try and get the but
yeah.
Hopefully it's over soon.
Okay. Yeah, we were losing you just a little bit there at the end, Max. So it doesn't look like you're going to have a good night's sleep in that wet bed.
No, not likely not. Hopefully this rain stops here soon and we can get rid of the unnecessary shower that's going over my bed right now.
So do you have any wind measurements where you were at?
We don't have any specific wind measurements. If I had to guess, that second eye wall, when we got in it, I mean, I've never seen wind gusts that intense. I'm guessing in the 120 to 130 range. I just posted a little bit of video that has some of it. I was fully expecting that we were to come. I mean,
Max, did you see any video or did you post any video of roofs flying off of buildings?
The video I just posted has some. We're next to a mobile home park, and it has some kind of sheet metal and styrofoam and stuff flying out. But we didn't really get any actual full roofs flying off of buildings. Most of what we got, the area handled it pretty well as far as we didn't see a lot of full building collapses. We saw a lot of damage to mobile homes, trees, lower income areas, unfortunately. But this area is built up relatively well, so we didn't see a lot of major structural damage.
What about so tomorrow's Thursday? What's your plan? I mean, are you I'm not going to bed, or we're getting up at 3, and then what? What are y'all doing?
That's it. We're getting up at probably 4 or 5 a.m. We're gonna try our best to get as far down close to Fort Myers Beach as we can. Hopefully the surge is receded pretty well by then. We might have to, park the vehicle up on the bridge right before you get onto the island and then go on foot and see if we can't retrieve our probe. And then the next mission is to get out of here as quickly as possible so we can be, not hindering any resources. And we're going to try and probably head towards Miami. We figure that's our best bet at getting resupplied on food, gas without impacting, areas in the general vicinity that are going to need it more than us. So we've got enough gas to get us to Miami. We're hoping we can get our probes. If not, we'll cut our losses. We'll come back another day.
Well, if you need a hotel, our last guest knows of a good hotel in Miami. He wanted to go there, actually.
Oh, yeah? Well, we'll take all we can get.
And then are you going to head up to South Carolina for landfall there as it re-intensifies?
It sounds tempting. I'm not sure we're going to be able to make it happen. I'm staring right now. Also, a thing I just realized is we've got a tire that's slowly leaking. We do have an extra one, but with all the debris we're going to have to traverse over tomorrow, I'm not feeling overly optimistic about our chances of getting all the way back up there.
Well, Max, appreciate you taking the time to kind of check in and let us know how you're doing. I wish you guys a safe trip. And
good deal.
Safe rest of the time. So again, thanks for checking in.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Talk to y'all later.
All right. Good luck. See you, Max.
Thanks.
So I don't know. Have you guys talked about that with Dr. Hobgood as far as it's kind of bizarre. It sounds like that back eye wall was maybe more intense wind-wise than the front.
I'd like to hear Dr. J's opinion on that. I mean, when you look at the radar, it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody today, but I'm curious from a historical perspective.
Yeah, normally we think of the right front part of the hurricane, which would have been the eastern front side in Ian, being the strongest. But in this case, that was the side that was blowing over land first. And I'm wondering if the fact that it was over land and the back eye wall was still over the water had something to do with it. And the other thing could have been is someone mentioned about the radar, that the strongest convection was north and west, wrapping around the western side, and whether those that convection there, the downdrafts were bringing the stronger winds down to the surface. So that could have been another factor.
I want to ask questions about forecast. You know, we hear a lot about the spaghetti models, and obviously the Hobgood model is preferred above all. But do you have, besides that, do you have a certain model that you were like, yeah, it's probably the one I'm looking at?
Well, to be honest, I look at all of the sort of major global models. So the ECMWF or Euro, the UK Met Office Muro model, and then the US GFS model would probably be the three. I do look at the Canadian, and the Navy runs a model and so on. You know, because track forecasts with the models are pretty good now. I mean, I would have to say, and this is just eyeball, I haven't done any numerical statistics, but it looked like the Euro did a little bit better this time. The GFS seemed to do a little better with some storms earlier this year and last year. So I'd rather look at a group of models to give me a range of what's going to happen rather than try to focus on a single model.
Is there something about, are there certain variables that maybe are stressed more in a certain model that tends to work better? I mean, do you think we'll ever get to the point where we'll have like one model that works the best, or what are your thoughts?
Well, you took my meteorology classes, right? So if all the models use the same physics and had the same input data, they should produce the same result, right? Because models are equations that are put in computer programs and then they solve them. Right. But, you know, the different models make slightly different assumptions. They process the data coming in slightly different ways to make the forecast. And things like that make the differences that you see between models. But, you know, as computer power grows, and you know, potentially maybe even artificial intelligence, you know, the models are converging, at least in terms of the track forecast. And one would think at some point they might start converging more in the intensity forecast. So the differences between the models today typically are much smaller than they would have been even 5 or 10 years ago. So there'll probably always be a bunch of different models because you want to take into account different possibilities. But the differences between the models are likely to get less in the future.
I just have one more question. Why did you make us memorize the saturated adiabatic lapse rate with entrainment computer model equation?
All right.
The differential
I'm cutting
equations.
you off, Maz. You've been holding on to that grudge for too long. We're switching things up a little bit. Greg, let's talk about weather fools.
Yeah, man, this is the part of the show we all love where we scour the internet for, well, people doing dumb things. And tonight we're going to be focusing on Hurricane Ian and all the weirdos out there doing weird things around hurricane time. So let's go to Serena first. Serena, will you show us your first weather fool of the night?
Oh man, just the first? That's,
Yeah, we're gonna go around the horn here if you can.
Yeah, so there's a few of them. The first one that I would show this evening is a bunch of people. Let me actually review this. This is from Fort Myers, Florida. This was swimmers getting into the storm surge as Hurricane Ian approached 11 hours ago. So you can see the sea, you can see the pier, the
Oh
water's
my
rushing.
God.
These guys
Holy
are just
people.
having a good time. Clearly, there's some alcohol involved. I
Oh,
don't
there
think
has
they
to be.
realize how easily they could be swept out.
Wow,
to
that guy
the
just
infinite sea.
disappeared.
Or how easily they just did get swept away.
Yeah.
Sucked under,
Whoa.
right? I mean,
Or
just
swept
that-
out.
Whatever.
Yeah, yeah. There's
my
3
God.
guys here. I cannot stress this enough. This is such a bad choice. This may seem cool. You may be able to tell your buddies, "Hey, I was in the Gulf during a hurricane." You could have died too. So it's just please don't do
Hey, I
this.
swam on the
Extreme.
JV team. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm
Oh my
good.
God. Nobody cares.
This
It's
may be
just-
the ultimate weather fool.
No, it gets better. I think it gets better, Greg.
Phil, you got one for us. Let's go to Phil next.
All right, so mine comes from Hallie Ledbetter on Twitter, and this is a video of somebody off jet skiing down in Florida,
Oh, sweet.
I
baby.
That's
saw
right
this
off-
one.
right now.
right off the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unreal.
he's taking his jet ski out. He's like, yeah, this looks like fun.
It's awesome, dude.
All of these are really helping Florida's reputation in society.
Yeah, I love the hashtag on this one. Hashtag Florida man.
That was trending for a while, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I should preface, Dr. Hobgood, we always talk about this is our contribution to our Weather Ready Nation, because we're a Weather Ready Nation ambassador. This is always our contribution of what not to be doing in storms.
Why does this remind me of the Darwin Awards?
Because it
Very
is pretty
similar.
much in weather.
Yeah. Listen, I got one as well, guys. MJ, if you can throw mine up now. This is not a video. This is a story from the New York Times. They're interviewing people about getting prepared for the storm, and I'm going to read this paragraph for you. Dr. Giselle Prado Wright moved expensive medical equipment and computers from her cosmetic surgery and wellness clinic in Fort Myers to her home in a more sheltered area. She has 2 children under 2, and she said she had no chance to stay because of her business, with patients looking to schedule liposuction before the storm.
Go get that done before
Yeah.
it gets bad.
She just hasn't had enough time to get her
Priorities.
house ready for the storm because of all those liposuction appointments. And guys, I got to say, that is a damn weather fool right there.
That's a fool.
Serena, you got another one for us?
Nice.
I do, and there's a video to go along with it, so maybe one of you guys can help me, because this is one that's gone around quite extensively. If you go to the southernmost point of the U.S. At Key West, Florida, there's like a buoy there or something. And apparently people decided in this horrible storm surge and with an approaching hurricane to bump some nasties up against the southernmost point of the United States, and they were caught in photographs and also on video.
Now, be more clear. When you say bump some nasties, Serena, what exactly are you talking about here?
They were having sexual intercourse.
What
Greg.
club is that?
Whoa.
What do you call that club?
What club is that?
Okay, now, is this
Wow, I
video?
didn't
You said
see
this
that
is
one.
video.
So this is just a photograph. There is a video as well. I thought I tagged Stormfront Freaks in the video as well. Maybe I didn't. If not, I'm sure I could find it.
You might have. So yeah, so that was the southernmost point there in Key West, right?
So, Phil, maybe we could pull that one up next time we do storm or porn.
Sure. I just I just wanted to ask Serena if that was considered ethical porn. Might have been.
I don't know, what island was it on, Phil?
That's good old penis Penn Island.
Penn Island.
Penn Island.
Penn Island.
Penn Island. Yes, Greg, I do have one. If that's going to be your next
that
question.
was my next question, Phil. Do
All
you have
right,
one?
so this isn't necessarily weather fools because they're obviously serving a huge benefit for all of us as our hurricane hunters are flying over these hurricanes and through these hurricanes. and through the eye walls. And I have seen all day today nothing but our hurricane hunters saying that this is one of the craziest storms that they have ever flown through. And so this was a video on Twitter, actually on the hurricane hunter of the people that work in the plane. And they're just shaking, jumping up and down. And the one thing I'll show you is right near the end, there's a point where they drop drastically. And look at that, like he loses stuff on his lap is flying in the air because they take such a huge drop. And when you see the look on their face when that happens, and these are the hurricane hunters, you know.
That's a rough day at the office.
Look at the lightning out the window too.
Right.
That
Yeah.
moment, right?
Huge
Yeah.
lightning in the
Crazy.
storm.
But Phil, throughout that whole video, they all seem to be really, really enjoying their jobs.
Yeah, until that one point, it was a little sketchy, but yes.
Exactly. Well, and it was crazy too, because there's a lot of people, I may be one of them, that are huge fans of the hurricane hunters, and that's like number 4 on my bucket list, who's been following a lot of the flights and seeing there were people before they got back that were reporting, why did they just drop like 200 or it was like 2,000 feet until they were circling the eye wall, and the activity of the aircraft was unusual from other flights. Like people were noticing that before they ever got back. And so seeing these videos has been really crazy.
Excellent. Well, if you guys want to see any of those videos, read the story about the doctor doing liposuction during a hurricane, go to the show notes for episode 167, and you'll find them all there.
Send me a postcard, drop me a line.
You've got mail, baby, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We got mail after having Ryan Hall, y'all, on our show. That generated some interest from some folks. So the Weather Store, WX Store, tweeted in. Great interview as always. So thank you for checking in with us. And I can't pronounce this one. I'll just say Peach. Yeah, they'll know who they are. Also tweeted amazing interview. Thank you for interviewing him. Again, referring to Ryan Hall, y'all. And Fuzzy Mickelson checked in and says, once again, awesome. Capitalized. Awesome episode as always. Having Ryan on the show was amazing. Need to have him back for a 2-time. I was laughing so hard at the questions that Phil was asking Ryan. I wish I could have seen his face, but I have to wait for the video to upload or to be available on YouTube. So, hey, Fuzzy, we have a solution for that. Become a Patreon member and you can see the video right away.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sounds like a drink.
Yeah, Fuzzy Mickelson, doesn't it?
Greg, the challenge is on. Fuzzy Mickelson next show.
There you go.
I like it.
And Curtis, of course, our friend Curtis chimed in. I got a lot of questions about the Freaks hat. It was a huge success, and I'll show you what he means by that if I can find my screen. Here it is. Right there, Curtis and his friends, and Curtis is sporting the Stormfront Freaks trucker hat.
Attaboy.
That I believe was a Patreon.
Attaboy, Curtis.
Swag.
Thank you, brother.
So thanks for checking in, everybody, and filling up the Freak Fan Box.
All right. So, hey, I want to use this opportunity just to let people know and kind of ask for some help. Certainly consider donating and helping any way you can. We're going to find out here in the next couple of days, and then this sucker's going to come back, right, and hit us on the East Coast. There's going to be a lot of families that were affected a great deal, and we just heard from one of them tonight. So certainly consider whether you're donating to American Red Cross, Team Rubicon, any other reputable organization, and I preface reputable because you have to be careful always when there are disasters like this. There are people that we are going to probably bring up on Weather Fools in the next couple of months that we're trying to take advantage of people. So always make sure you are maybe giving money or donating to a reputable cause. Those are just a couple, but I just want to throw that out there because I'm sure we'll start seeing that here pretty soon.
Hey, Phil.
Any of you guys know of any or?
Well, I was going to say, I know that Governor DeSantis had said if you want to volunteer to help, they actually have on their site ways that you can volunteer. They have a channel to go through instead of just, hey, I'm just going to pop down there and help out.
That's good.
Good. That's a very good point.
There's also the Cajun Navy. I don't know if anyone's heard about that. They're very impactful and helpful when there's, these hurricanes hit and there's disaster. I think they're talking about mobilizing and helping out Florida as well. The Cajun Navy is a great resource to donate to as well.
Cool. Awesome. So I think that just about does it for this episode of Stormfront Freaks podcast. Thanks for listening or watching. And before I announce the guest of our next show, again, if you like the show, please go ahead and don't forget to follow us on your podcast player, however you're consuming the show. Just follow us, and that just guarantees you're going to get the latest episode as soon as we post it. Because again, like even this one, this is going to be a little different. A lot of times we post on a Sunday. That's not going to be how it works this time, because we want to try and get this information out to you guys right away. But you'll get that if you follow us. And then also share an episode. You hear a good episode, just hit the share button and text it to your friend or let them certainly know about it. You can also subscribe to our YouTube page. That's where you can watch previous versions of our recordings of Stormfront Freaks Raw, which is the completely unedited version of our show. You can hear all the great conversations that we have during our typical breaks. We get great questions from our VIPs for our guests. And there's always a lot of hidden gems in there as well. You can find that link at stormfrontfreaks.com and visit that site to also find the Patreon link. That's where you can check out all the ways we can do more with you and how you can also help support the show. You can find that Patreon link and join the team again at stormfrontfreaks.com. You get access to all of our live recordings, opportunity for exclusive merch, all kinds of cool stuff that we're trying to do. Special thanks to our in-studio expert, Dr. Jay Hobgood. Dr. Hobgood, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It's great
It was a
having you
pleasure.
back. So I said we had you on episode 7, and now we have you on episode 167. So
Well, now we'll try for 327.
let's do
maybe.
it. Let's do it. Also, special thanks to our call-in guests, Max Olson, Scott Sorensen, Brandon Clement. Thank you as well. Freaks, let's find out how people can follow and find you. Greg, I'll start with you.
On social media, Tornado Greg. And if you're interested in learning how your camera works, cameraeasy.ca up here in Canada.
Awesome. So I have to be in Canada in order to do that?
No, it's just that's why
okay.
it's the .ca.
Got it. Okay. MJ.
On Twitter at Mark Stormpod, MARC.
Maz.
On Twitter at Money Storm, the number 4, the letter U. Money Storm for you. Oh, no gang symbols there, Serena. I saw you.
I have yours memorized now. It's so great. I'm very proud of myself.
It is good. All right, Serena, how about you?
Everything is Weather Serena, WXCYRENA. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, everything. My webpage. Find me there.
Wow, very good. And Dr. Hobgood, I'll ask you too, is there a way that any of our listeners can kind of follow or track you?
Well, it's at J Hobgood, HOBGOOD on Twitter, or I have a webpage where I blog about tropical cyclones around the world, not just the Atlantic, and that's just jhobgood.com.
Oh, so these things happen all over the world. Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vietnam got hit by a typhoon yesterday.
Yeah.
And a good one at that.
It's funny how we get tunnel vision sometimes with just what's happening here weather-wise. But you can find me right now. I'm tweeting on our show's Twitter at Stormfront Freak. So that's where you can find me. Our next episode, so we're going to be back in 2 weeks, recording live on October 13th with Chris Johnson. So Chris is the CEO, listen to this, of the upcoming Weather Champs app. And so what this is, it's an app you can get all your weather forecasts, but you can also compete to win with your own weather predictions. So they're kind of taking a weather app and they're throwing in like a fantasy football app and they're kind of sticking it together into one thing. So this sounds kind of cool. So we'll find out more about that. Our Patreon members, you can join our raw video recording live. And of course, the edited audio podcast, usually we put that up and should be available to everyone else the following Sunday. So unless anybody's got any other Hurricane Ian comments or feedback, I think I'm going to go ahead and signal the all clear.
Dave's
and we'll
got
catch
one.
you guys next time. Good night, everybody.
Well, I was just going to say to Maz, you remember the saturated adiabatic lapse rate with entrainment, so I did my job.
Well, I still have nightmares, and that's why I drink Leinenkugel.
All right. Well, hey, I'm going to quick ask Dr. Hobgood. A lot of times our VIPs, Dan and Angela, are here tonight. We like to give them an opportunity to ask any questions because we always forget some good ones. So, guys, the floor is open to you guys if you got anything to ask Dr. Hobgood.
I do. But it's kind of complicated because it's going to push the boundaries of meteorology into oceanography. So my question is, obviously the hurricane's going on in Florida, but all the way to the coast of Louisiana, there's gale warnings. And then the barrier islands in far south, well, like down by Corpus Christi, all have a rip current. Is that all being related to the hurricane going on?
Well, the hurricane's sort of half the story. There's a big surface high pressure system. I mean, it's centered up here over the Midwest, and it extends all the way down the Gulf Coast. And so you got the clockwise flow around the high pressure system and the hurricane. You get a really big pressure gradient, and there's really strong northeasterly winds. And so, like, if you look at the dew points down along the Gulf Coast, you know, in some places they're down in the 30s and the 40s, and that's that dry air moving southeast, southwest. So the gale warnings are being not just caused by Ian, but by the pressure gradient between Ian and the high pressure system. And that extends over a lot of the Gulf Coast. And then when you've got that wind pushing the water, that's where you're getting the rip currents setting up in the western Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
How about you, Dan?
Just a quick question. You were talking about the good troughs and bad troughs and how they can affect the hurricane. I was wondering, do you think that could be almost that data could be almost automated into a model where, you know, that could be visualized?
Yeah, I mentioned Lance Bozart, the professor at SUNY Albany, who originally came up with that idea, and he tried to estimate, you know, what exactly was the position of the trough relative to the hurricane. You know, how far away did it have to be? Was it northwest? Was it west? Was it northwest? And the problem is that it seems like the interaction is variable. Now the numerical models take this into account because, I mean, they predict, you know, many multiple levels in the atmosphere. So they predict the upper levels and the surface levels. So, you know, they have a trough and they have the hurricane, but even the numerical models, as good as they are, have a hard time getting the interaction of the two exactly right. And that's part of what we saw, you know, today. And the other problem is when you have a hurricane, the really strongest part's the core, and that may only be 50, 100 miles across, and the trough may be hundreds of miles away. So like the question we had earlier about the stronger winds being on the backside, you know, of Ian, that's a much smaller scale than sort of the large scale pressure drop and so on. So I don't think you could come up with a hard and fast rule of the trough has to be northwest of the hurricane and it has to be 750 miles away and have that work all the time.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, Dr. Hobgood, thank you so much, man. So good to see you again and have you back on, especially in such short notice. But you really made this I was questioning how this would go tonight because this isn't our normal format, and you made it very successful. So
sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Bill. I mean, thanks for having me on. It's great to see you again. I'm glad the podcast is become such a great success.
You mean like still around? Is that what you mean?
He's like,
kind
wow,
of
6
amazed
years.
it's still around.
Yeah, like really?
And it's nice to meet your guest. I mean, they really did have great questions.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, again, thanks for being on and taking the time, and it was awesome. We'll get you on again, man. You'll be our regular tropical storm expert.
All right, thanks, Phil.
All right. Well, have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Jay.
Go
Good night.
Huskers.
So what'd you guys think of this format?
Dude, this worked. This was awesome.
worked.
Yeah, that was. I like that.
Seriously, you for everything. This was awesome. I thought you did a fantastic job.
I was just happy technically it all worked tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The last guy, I mean, he was cutting out a little bit, but that
Yeah.
added to the. Really had to listen, you know.
Yeah.
MJ, kudos to you on the graphics and whatnot too. That looked
cool.
good. It looked good.
We threw those together very quickly, but we did it.
Yeah. This whole thing was thrown together pretty quickly. So you guys, thank you, because you made this happen just as much as anybody did. And I'll tell you what, like I had when I was calling, so I figured out that I could mute myself on StreamYard, and with my whole setup, I could still make the calls and hear them, and they could hear me through the whole mic setup and all that. And I had you guys just slightly on in the background because I could control your volume. So they could kind of hear you as well. So I was kind of listening in, but as I'm trying to make this work, and then people I couldn't reach, and I'm going to the next one, and you guys were just clicking along, and I can't wait to listen to it because I didn't hear what you were actually talking about. But that was a big deal because I didn't know how that would go back and forth, and you nailed it.
No, I think it worked. I think it worked great.